Dobar dan. Dobar dan i vama. Po četvrti, peti put, tko to zna, bit će još prilike. Dakle, usred globalne krize smo već neko vrijeme, barem se tako piše. Na određeni način ste ju najavljivali u knjigama. Po vama, kako se ona zbila, otkuda je stigla, ako je umjetno stvorena, što se njome htjelo postići iz vaše perspektive?
Well, it's interesting when you look at life and people in general that we don't tend to ask the big questions. We tend to just focus on the little questions. So we'll ask about how much money this costs or how much money I'm earning and all the rest of it. But we don't ask the big question, which is, what is money? And if we don't know what money is, then we can't understand how we're manipulated through the money system and how what we call banking is legalized theft. And because, of course, it doesn't mean it's lawful, if you like. It doesn't mean it's right or just. It just means it operates within the laws that those that control the banking system and at the same time control the political system have passed to allow banks to be legalized, corrupt, robbers of the people. And they do it like this. And to understand this banking crisis, we really got to understand, first of all, what money is. When you go into a bank and you ask for a loan on a house or car or whatever, what did the bank do? I mean, what was the process? Again, we don't seem to ask those questions. Oh, well, they lend us money. Well, okay. Well, where do they get it from? What has happened because the same network of families that I've been exposing all this time have controlled, indeed created the banking system as we know it, have also controlled the politicians that pass legislation about banking laws and finance. Laws have been passed to create something called fractional reserve lending. It sounds a boring title and all the rest of it, but we really need to understand what this means. Fractional reserve lending allows banks to lend at least, and it is at least, 10 times what they actually have on deposit. It's called credit. You know, people say, there's a credit crunch. What does that mean? It means that loans of, in effect, non-existent money are not being made on the scale they were before. But I'll come to that in a second. You go into a bank and you put $1 in a bank, say. That bank can now lend 9, 10 times that dollar because the law says you only have to have something like 10% of your theoretical money that that bank has on deposit. All the rest you can loan out. So you go into a bank and you borrow $50,000, say. Now, what the bank has done to create that is type into your account $50,000. It's not there. It's called credit, $50,000. From that moment, you start paying interest on $50,000 to that bank that has been created simply by someone at the bank typing $50,000 into your account. Staggering, but true. They've not moved precious metal anywhere. They've not moved real money into your account, but the theoretical figures on a screen money that they create out of thin air. But it gets better or worse. I then take $50,000, a check of that money, and I buy a car. The person I buy the car to takes the $20,000 and he puts it in his bank. Now his bank, Bank B, can lend 10 times on that $20,000, which at Bank A has been created out of thin air. Then he signs a check to someone else or buys something else, and then the person they buy it from, they put their money in their bank, which is Bank C. Say he bought something for $5,000. Bank C can now lend 10 times the $5,000, which has come from that bank being able to lend on the $20,000, which goes back originally to Bank A, where the money was created out of nothing. Now, when you follow this round, and some people have done the maths, one loan to one person of fresh air, out of nowhere money, credit, when it's traveled around the banks and gone from person to person, the interest the banking system as a whole gets from that original one fresh air loan is stupendous. And every time you go to the bank and you have a loan, you're starting that process again from the money that you loan. Now it has obviously fantastic implications for control of society, but it goes further. What is the difference between an economic boom and an economic depression? It's the amount of money and the perceived value of that money in circulation at the time. So this is what the banking system has done over and over and over again, and we're seeing it now in a very extreme way. Stage one, you want to stimulate a boom. So what do? You make lots of loans, because that's how money comes into circulation. People say, how does money come into circulation? It's governments in it. No, it's banks, private banks making loans. The more credit they give out, the more money they put into circulation, the more they have what now is a credit crunch. What they're doing is taking money out of circulation. So in stage one, they make lots of loans to people, and the criteria for getting a loan comes down and down and down, so more and more people get them. This puts lots of units of exchange in circulation, and therefore the ability for people to buy things. This means that companies have to make more things to meet demand. So people get more jobs, and there's more orders on the books, etc. And people say, hey, we're in a real boom time now. In boom times, because of the confidence that people have, because there are lots of orders at their company they work for, their jobs are strong and safe and all the rest of it, I think it is, people tend to get into more debt. So they borrow money for a bigger house, they have a bigger car, they might have 2 holidays instead of 1 or whatever. And they're doing it overwhelmingly on borrowed money, this fresh air money. What this creates eventually is an economic boom where lots of people have got themselves in lots of debt during this boom time. Then, at the optimum time, to bring about the outcome that they want, the banking system, which basically works as one unit because it's coordinated. You see individual banks, but the system itself works as one unit through these banks. What they then do is they create a situation that justifies them taking money out of circulation. So what they do is they raise the criteria massively, that's what's happened now, of what you need to do to get a loan. So what they're doing is they're taking money out of circulation. They also can call in loans that are already out there, and this combination means that there's not so much money, units of circulation, exchange in circulation. So people can't buy as many things. So companies don't have to make as many things. So people start losing their jobs. Companies start going bankrupt. And what you could symbolize it as is in stage one, the banking system throws the fishing line out. And then at stage two, the depression, the bust, they then reel it in. So all these people have taken out all this debt. And if you don't pay back the debt, which is fresh air money, then the bank has the right to take your real wealth, your house, your car, your land, etc. And so as people can't pay back their loans because there's not enough money in circulation anymore to do so, the banks start getting hold of more and more real wealth, land, resources, houses, all the rest of it, in exchange for fresh air money. And then they move to the bust area, which we're in now, and people are in desperate financial straits. And on the face of it, some of the banks are. But what I'm talking about here is the banking system. that this network of families control. Individual banks can go bust. It doesn't affect the system. The system's still there. You could think of it of, if you own the European Champions Football League, you don't care if Manchester United lose to Barcelona or Barcelona lose to Manchester United. Like, you don't really care about individual banks, where this one goes under or this one, you know, gets stronger or whatever, because you own the whole game. And it's from that level that all this boom and bust is manipulated. So the control of money in circulation is the control of society. It's control over whether some people eat, whether some people have their homes or don't have their homes. So from that point of control, you can manipulate what we have now experienced. And what did we experience? It came out of the United States, and the reason it was engineered from there is because the United States economy still today, when it is affected in some way, it has global implications. So they orchestrated it through there, and they did it like this. There was a man who was appointed head of the Federal Reserve in America, the alleged Central Bank of America, and most Americans think it's the central bank of the American government. It is not. It is a cartel of private banks, the most important of which is the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. And I've been exposing Alan Greenspan, this longtime head of the Federal Reserve. He was appointed during the Reagan-Bush administration. He remained head of the Federal Reserve through Father Bush's period, through the two Bushes periods of Clinton, and through the virtually the entire two periods of Boy George Bush, apart from a couple of years. I think it was 2006 he got out, something like that. And so he basically controlled the American economy all the way through this period. And what he did and orchestrated, and this was followed in Britain and other countries too, was a process of removing all the checks and balances of the financial system, which stopped people making ridiculous loans that people wouldn't be able to pay back, and basically stopping a greed motivated free-for-all. All those checks and balances were taken away. What they also did was create a system where within the banks people were getting big bonuses for getting people to take out loans, like for houses and stuff. So the more loans they acquired and got people to take out, the more bonuses these people got. Now, there came a point through this so-called economic boom through the 1990s and into this century where they basically picked off, in terms of mortgages and what have you, all the people who had the income and the financial capacity to actually pay back the loans. So if they were going to keep getting the bonuses, they had to start looking elsewhere to give loans out. And the only place they could go was into the realm of people who actually did not have the financial stability and income to pay back the loan. But it didn't matter to them chasing the bonuses, because as soon as they signed the loan, they got a bonus. They'd sold another loan. And this, of course, was a disaster waiting to happen. And so what happened was eventually, staggeringly, of course, obviously, vast numbers of people started to not pay their mortgage, not pay their loans. They couldn't afford it. They never could afford it from the start. And the banks started to get in trouble in terms of cash flow and all the rest of it. And we had this crisis, which manifested towards the end of the Bush administration last year. What then happened is they got the people who represent the banks that caused the problem to come into government and decide how government was going to react to the problem. So it was like having a housebreaker invited to the police force to decide how they were going to react to this problem caused by housebreakers. I mean, it was ridiculous. And during the Bush administration, towards the end, they had a man called Henry, also known as Hank Paulson. This man was head of Goldman Sachs until 2006. And Goldman Sachs, under his stewardship, was a major player in creating this collapse. They make him, in 2006, Treasury Secretary in America, and when the collapse comes, which he's massively played a part in, he's now Treasury Secretary, and he decides how the government's going to react. So what does he decide? That the government, in other words, the American taxpayer, is going to throw multi-billions, hundreds of billions of pounds, or dollars in their case, at the banking industry to prop it up from the problems it has itself caused. This was going to stabilize the system. They knew it wasn't. And so then comes Barack Obama, who claims to be Mr. Change, but he's Mr. Business as usual, just another frontman for the same network of families that controlled Bush. So he comes in, right in the middle of this crisis of the banking system and the financial system. What does he do, Mr. Change? He appoints an economic team which is like a who's who of those who were massively responsible for creating the problem. He brings in the president of the New York Federal Reserve Bank, this key bank in the Federal Reserve cartel, which was fundamentally involved in all the deregulation that allowed this free-for-all to happen and the collapse to come. And he takes this man called Timothy Geithner, and he makes him Treasury Secretary. He brings in another man, a banker's boy to his fingertips, who's earned massive amounts of money from the banking industry, called Larry Summers, and he makes him one of his key economic advisors and executives. He brings in a guy called Paul Volcker. Paul Volcker was the longtime head of the Federal Reserve before Alan Greenspan. And Larry Summers, in 1991, wrote or signed a memo when he was chief economist to the World Bank, advising the World Bank to dump their toxic materials in third world countries and not Western countries, because in third world countries the compensation for the death and disease and injury caused by dumping these toxic materials there would be less than in a Western industrialized country. This is one of the key advisors to Barack Obama. And what do they decide, these bankers people who created the problem when they come in? They decide that the Obama administration should not, no, we must not throw hundreds of billions of dollars at the banking system, okay? We must throw trillions of dollars at the banking system. And so the American government has hurled trillions of borrowed money, which the taxpayers and children and generations yet unborn will be left with the bill for, at the very banking system that has caused the problem. But this is not incompetence. You see, incompetence and bureaucratic incompetence is one of the great cover stories for a cold, calculated plan. I've talked to you before about the structure that this network of families wants to create to install this global centralized dictatorship. And it is this: a world government that dictates to every country. And the world government would control a world central bank that would control all global finance in every country. A world army which would impose the will of the world government, a world currency to replace all cash currencies with one world electronic currency, no cash, and a microchip population connected to a global computer system and the global positioning satellite system, and then under that, the unions, the European Union, American Union, all the rest of it I've talked about. Now, key in that structure, in what we're talking about today, is the World Central Bank. If you do not have an enormous global economic crisis that you have to find a solution for, there is no way that you are going to be able to persuade people to completely restructure global finance around a world central bank that would, not in theory, but in absolute effect, be a financial dictatorship to every person on the planet. You're not going to persuade people to do that. What do you mean we want a world central bank dictating world finance? We don't need that. Everything's fine. Leave it. So what you do, of course, this is the technique that they use all the time, is you need a massive problem that destroys the status quo, destroys the financial status quo, and then you can then offer the solution, which is, look, this is so bad, there's no way we can sort this out. We have a global crisis because of globalization of the financial system now. No one can sort it out individually. We're going to have to find a global solution to this. And they are already talking about the British Prime Minister Gordon Brown, who was Chancellor of the Exchequer through the Blair Premiership from 97 over 10 years, who mirrored in Britain what Greenspan was doing in America, destroying all regulation to allow the free-for-all to happen. He's now Prime Minister. And he is talking about the need for a new global architecture of financial governance. And there's newspaper and magazine articles being placed. Well, maybe what we need is a world central bank. It's already being talked about. So the idea is to create this, and has been, to create this crisis, and then to make it so bad that people accept the globalized solution to it, in effect solution, alleged solution, and so global finance changes and control of it changes in ways that it never would without the crisis. And so what we're looking at now is a three-stage process to bring that about. One has happened, one is happening, the other one is waiting in the wings to happen. Stage one of this engineered collapse is to collapse the economy in a way that people saw that there was a major problem. This is what they did towards the end of the Bush administration. Stage two was to bring in the people who were responsible for engineering the crisis to offer the solutions to the crisis, and those solutions have been, of course, to hurl unbelievable amounts of borrowed money at the problem, at the banks who've caused the problem, etc. The idea of stage two is to empty the gun, if you like, to empty the gun barrels in terms of ability to react to the problem of the governments. You get them to throw so much borrowed money that there comes a point there's no way they can continue to do that. You also make sure, and we're now seeing this blatantly in America, that all that money thrown at the problem has no effect. And we're now seeing in congressional Senate hearings on Capitol Hill, where these financial administrators from the Federal Reserve and other government financial agencies are being asked, where has all this money gone? Where has all this vast amount of money gone that's been thrown at the banks? Who's got it? What have they done with it? Where is it? And they're like, well, we haven't done the audit yet. No, you don't know, do you? Well, I can't tell you at this moment, no. It's gone into a black hole because it's not meant to have an effect. And what they're doing in America, and some financial experts are exposing this, is they're artificially manipulating the figures of the banks to make it appear as if they're their problems are getting less and they're starting to, make money again. It's all financial manipulation to give the impression that things are turning around when they're not. This is stage 3 now. And I can't say when this will be. I can say when it will be, but I can't say when it will be in time. But when it will be when they decide that the barrels of the governments in terms of reacting to this crisis are empty and there's no more money or anything else they can do to react. And then they're going to crash the world economy on a major scale. And how bad will it be? It will be as bad as is necessary to get the world to accept a totally restructured global financial system based on a world central bank, which will be a dictatorship to everybody on the planet in terms of finance and financial potential and opportunity, etc. Now, what they want at the world government, world central bank level is just a mirror of what's happening in the European Union. See, in the European Union, they have the bureaucracy dictating from the center, which is what they'd want the world government to be at a world level. But they also have the European Central Bank, which is the dictator of finance within the European Union. So what will happen when they go to this world level is you'll have the World Central Bank as the prime dictator, and then it will operate down through the European Central Bank and the central bank of the other unions that are being created, like the African Union and the American Union that they're closing in on. And so you have this financial pyramid of central banks headed by the World Central Bank, which will control all global finance. And there are many reasons why they've engineered this collapse, but this is a key reason why they've done it. And, just watch what unfolds. And we'll see when they first start talking about, we really need a world central bank. It might not be too far from now. It's just a case of how bad do we have to make it before we get what we want. And if they have to make it really, really bad, well beyond the 1930s Great Depression, they will do so, because they're ruthless.
U cijelom svijetu danas postoji nekakva vrst povjerenja, uzdanja u novog američkog predsjednika, zbog toga jer Amerika naravno ima najveći utjecaj na svjetske financije. Naravno, prema vašim knjigama, cilj je u stvari Ameriku uništiti kao globalnu silu, da bi se mogla stvoriti jednu drugu globalnu državu. Vi u svakom slučaju baš ne zvučite kao optimist po pitanju povjerenja u novog američkog predsjednika.
I've been talking about Barack Obama and writing about Barack Obama for many, many months, well before he won the election. And a lot of people criticized me for it, because I was saying that this man is a total fraud and a total fake, because people looked at his smile, his switch-on smile. Is the camera on? Yes. Oh, wait. It's this switch-on smile. It's like Tony Blair, Press the button, get the smile. And what he was saying about change and I stand for the people and yes we can and all the rest of it. Hope, something to believe in. And they took that on face value, and that's what people do. That's why they're so easy to manipulate. So what I did, I started looking at his background. And he comes out of the most, or at least one of the most corrupt political systems on the planet, which is Chicago, Illinois. If you are not deeply, deeply corrupt and have a attitude that you'll do what's necessary to get power, then you do not survive politically in Chicago and Illinois, never mind prosper. This man's star absolutely soared. So you look at his background and at his funding and his associates, and they are like a who's who of Chicago villains, including a man called Tony Rezko, who's one of his major fundraisers, of his for his political career, who is now in jail for fraud. And again, around him are a series of people who you wouldn't trust to tell you the time in a room full of clocks. That again come out of Chicago. There's a man called Rahm Emanuel. This man, you know when Rahm Emanuel's lying because his lips are moving. And he's now White House Chief of Staff, controlling the Obama administration from the White House. And another man who's a close associate and works as one unit with Rahm Emanuel is a man called David Axelrod, another figure out of the deeply corrupt Illinois Chicago system, who was the man that orchestrated Obama's entire election campaign. He is now senior White House advisor to Obama, and he's the man who oversees the writing of everything that he says. And I mean writing because in America now, because Obama's gone back on so many fundamental things he said he would not do, and gone back on things he said he would do, that in America, very quickly now, a lot of people who supported him are going, hold on a second, what did we let ourselves in for here? And one of the things that they're seeing, which is a blatant confirmation that he's just a front man, just a salesman. I call him a used car salesman. He's not there to decide policy, he's there to sell it. And when you watch him speak, in any situation virtually, you will not see him look straight ahead. Just let people watching this program watch Obama when he's making a speech, even a short announcement often, and you'll see him look right, speaking, then he'll look left while he speaks, and then he'll look right again while he's speaking, and then left. What he's doing is looking at two teleprompter boards which have the words going down of his speech which he's reading. He is so welded to these teleprompters and the words that have been written for him, overseen by this guy David Axelrod, that on St. Patrick's Day in 2009, Obama attended a St. Patrick's Day reception, which the White House had invited people, including the Irish Prime Minister. And Obama stood up to make his welcome speech and thanked himself for inviting everybody because the Irish Prime Minister's speech was still on the teleprompter and not his own. So he started reading someone else's speech. And he's known in America now more and more as the teleprompter president. And so right down to even what he says in public is written for him. He is just there to sell the policies created in the shadows by the same network of people, of which Emanuel and Axelrod are public faces, of the force that controlled the Bush administration. So I've talked to you before about this technique, problem, reaction, solution, which is what we're talking about with the credit situation. Create the problem, get the reaction, do something, fear, and then offer the solution to the problems you've created. What they've done now with the last two presidents is have a presidential version of problem, reaction, solution. Bush was brought in to front up the creation of the problems, overseas wars and extending the American military, and towards the end, this financial crash. And then in comes Mr. Smile, Mr. Fake, to offer the solutions to the problems that were created through the Bush administration. And these solutions are advancing the agenda of that network that controls Obama as much as it controlled Bush. And this is why all the things that Obama said during his election campaign about civil rights, about not holding people without charge or trial, about what he would do financially, and a great swathe of things. He's gone back on all of them because what he said he would do was just to get the votes to get elected, and now he's in, he's just following the agenda of the people who put him there. He is no more Mr. Change than George Bush was. But what they did with Obama, and of course this guy Axel Rod orchestrated it, was to have the most blatant mass mind manipulation campaign that you could ever see. I studied mind control and mind control techniques in great detail over a period of some 5 years towards the end of the 90s and into the 2001. And I'm watching this Obama campaign unfold against Hillary Clinton and then against John McCain. And all these techniques are being used. And what they did with Obama was this, and this is used in many countries, and it's good to be wise to it. He kept repeating mantra phrases of change. And of course, behind him, whenever he spoke, there was these people holding, you know, these bits of paper and placards, change, change, Obama, change, all going in the subconscious, all mind manipulation. He talked about change, he talked about hope, he talked about something to believe in, and he talked about, yes, we can, yes, we can. At no point did he ever specify what any of that meant. So instead of people saying, well, hold on a second, this all sounds very nice, but what do you mean, Mr. Obama? What do you mean by this? What kind of change? What kind of something to believe in? He was never pressed on any of this. It was just the mantra. And what this created, by design, it created a situation where Obama became a blank screen on which vast numbers of people projected their version of what change, something to believe in, and hope, etc. meant. So, in effect, they manipulated the mass consciousness, or lack of it, to make Obama all things to all people. Because they got him to, if you thought change that you want meant this, you projected that onto him. Yes, he stands for that change that I want. So then he came into office, and of course all that's gone out the window. And he's now introducing, and this is the other thing, because of the smile and the I'm the good guy. By the way, what you need to know, and all you need to know, is I'm not George Bush, okay? Because George Bush's popularity was so low. But because of the public perception of George Bush, Obama is being able to get things through that Bush would never have been able to do.
Davide, hvala, kao i obično, baš smo se napričali, barem vi. U svakom slučaju vaša tema odrađujemo ratama, kao što se to radi s kreditima, nadamo se da neće na kraju se